Good afternoon, dear conference participants. Welcome to this workshop, How the Culture of School and Community Can Empower Kids for Success. My name is Ayjan Ramazanova. I'm a PhD student at Nazarbayev University, and I'm today moderating the session. I'm delighted to moderate the session as this speaker is quite special for me because about 2 years ago, I was reading this book, How to Raise Successful People by Esther. I liked it so much, so I decided to mail her with an invitation for the conference, and I was happy to get her reply. And it is wonderful that we are living in such a world without boundaries, even though we're experiencing a pandemic right now. Esther is really an extraordinary and wise person with rich experience in parenting, teaching, and life. So definitely we can learn a lot from her. I'm not surprising that people call her a godmother of Silicon Valley, as she brought up super successful 3 daughters and educated successful leaders. She is a leading American educator with teaching experience for 40 years. She is a leader in blending learning and the integration of technology into education. She is a founder of the Media Arts program at Palo Alto High School in California. Esther serves also as a vice chair of Creative Commons and has previously worked as a professional journalist. So Esther, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I am honored to be here. And I am speaking to you from Stanford University, where I live. And I've been here living on this campus for 40 years. So thank you so much. And I will tell you about my philosophy of how to raise successful people and how the culture of school and family can empower kids. So the question is really, what is culture? And culture can be defined as all the behaviors, ways of life, arts, beliefs, institutions of a population that are passed down from generation to generation. I think the key phrase is passed down from generation to generation, because culture has been called the way of life for an entire society. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is talk about and rethink the culture of school. So what is the culture of school today all over the world? The culture is to sit quietly at your desk, follow directions, memorize, and listen to the teacher. So how should the culture of school change? Well, in a world where we don't really know what the future holds, the focus should be on creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And you have to ask yourself, is that what the schools are doing today? So I wrote this book that was presented, thank you very much to the moderator, The Waj Way. It's in 24 languages and it is in Russian, I'm very happy to say. So I would like to recommend it, of course, since I wrote it. It tells you about my philosophy. So my pedagogy is in the book, and I'm going to tell you right now what it is. This is the acronym. The acronym is TRICK, TRICK, and it stands for trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And this is what I say belongs in all parenting, in all classrooms of today, and in all relationships. And the world has changed dramatically, and we don't need people that are just following instructions. My first book was published in 2015 called Moonshots in Education, and the goal was, again, to change education. It's a moonshot. So moonshot means changing the way we think of learning in the digital age. And it's based on John F. Kennedy's talk, 1961, in which he said, the world needs a moonshot, not because it's easy, but because it's hard, and because it is one we cannot afford to postpone, and one we intend to win. And it's the same thing. I think it's true for education. What we need to do is change the way teachers think of themselves from being a sage on the stage to a guide on the side. Now, it's very easy for me to say that, but unfortunately, it's not easy to do, because if you just think about culture, culture is what we pass down from one generation to the next. And so it's very hard to change this, but we need to do it. So Mark Benioff, who's the CEO of Salesforce, says about me, every industry is clamoring for more innovators, more creative leaders who can solve problems with intelligence and a strong sense of social responsibility. Esther Wojcicki knows exactly how to instill these values in our children. We need her insights now more than ever. So my teaching pedagogy started with the birth of my daughters. And here's my husband, Stanley Wojcicki, Stanford professor of physics. And of course, he's very smart and very scientific. And so he taught our daughters a lot about the science, the theory basically of why it's important to be able to prove something. So here is the whole family. This is me, my daughter Susan, my husband, my daughter Janet, and my daughter Anne. Here is Susan today. Susan is the CEO of YouTube. This is Janet. She's a professor of pediatrics at UCSF Medical Center focused on the obesity epidemic. And here is Anne. She's the co-founder of 23andMe, the largest personal genetics company. So this is what I spent my life doing, teaching. And I've been teaching for 40 years. And my goal has been to empower students. Just like I empowered my own children, I wanted to empower the students in my program. And so I cared a lot about them as people. So my program started in 1984 with 19 students. I had a typewriter. I was using X-Acto knives to cut the stories out, hot wax, and it was a bit of a challenge. And then today, what I have is the Palo Alto High School Media Arts Program, which turned out from those 19 students to the largest media program in the United States with over 700 students and 10 publications. So the question is, why did all these students want to join this program? And that's what I'm going to tell you about in this presentation. And it's all about TRIC, trusting, respecting, giving students independence, collaborating instead of dictating, and treating them with kindness. This is what the building looks like today. It's a very large building and this is a public high school. This is what the classroom looks like. And you can see me in the back there standing next to one of the students. But I have computer labs and also a large space like this. So students don't sit in rows and listen to the teacher talk. Students collaborate. You can see them collaborating here. And you can see that the furniture in the building facilitates collaboration. It's not rows of students lined up listening to a professor. Here's another picture. This is what they look like when they're collaborating. If you came to the classroom today, this is what you would see. The only difference is they would be wearing masks for the pandemic, but otherwise it's the same. So this is what I'm focusing on: creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And you have to ask yourself, in a typical classroom, when students are sitting in rows, listening to a professor, taking notes, memorizing for the test. Is this creativity? Do they learn to collaborate? Are they communicating with each other? Is there critical thinking involved? So this is the big change that I think needs to happen. So this is the kind of work the students produce. This is a 28-page newspaper. It has 3 sections, and it's produced, the ages of the students are 15 to 18. So it looks like professional, but it's actually done by students. And it's done well because they believe in themselves, because they're given a lot of opportunity to do it again, revise. Here's an inside page of the paper. And here is a double-page spread. And it's the topics are topics that the students come up with themselves. They aren't topics that I tell them to write about. They get to use their own independent ideas. And this is, of course, about feminist ideals. Here are 2 other centerfold pages. They're called spotlights. And one of them is about bursting the bubble. They know they live in a bubble here in Silicon Valley. And they write about it. They did some studies about it. On the other side, they're also talking about diversity on the college campus, how to get more diversity on the college campus. It's a problem. So this is another magazine. This is called the C Magazine. And those topics, again, are chosen by the students. The one on the left is about being gay. And the one in the middle is about the bamboo ceiling. It's the bamboo ceiling is basically what Asian students feel like they can't get to the top. And the one on the right is about fat in our foods, making us all fat. This is another copies of the C Magazine. I just wanted you to see the designs. They come up with the designs themselves. This is Verde. This is all student work. More student work. This is we have a magazine on sports. They read it. This is an 80-page. All the magazines are about 60 to 80 pages. This one is all the sports are done about the student sports. So this looks like they're professionals, but these are all students. The magazine on the right is a travel magazine. They get to write about travels, and the one on the left is a science magazine. So there's a lot of different magazines. So students learn entrepreneurial skills because they control the publication, they pay the bills. All the magazines are, and the newspapers are supported by advertising. It's real world learning. So in other words, they're not watching someone else do it. They're doing it. They're not reading about someone else doing it. They're, as I say, doing it. So a few of the graduates from Palo Alto Media Arts Program include, here's one, Noah Snyder. He's the Tokyo bureau chief for The Economist, and he based in Moscow. He also is in Japan. So, I mean, I have hundreds or thousands of students. These are just random ones that I picked that I thought might be interesting for you here. This is Gadi Epstein. He is the China Affairs editor for The Economist. He's based in New York. And he is actually spent a lot of time in China as well. And now has worked also for Forbes and for a few other publications. This is Nadav Gavlioff, and he is a reporter for the New York Times. Daniel Mason, he's a doctor at Stanford Medical Center, and he's also an author. And he wrote this book called The Winter Soldier. He wrote actually about 5 books. This is just one of the books. This is Jeremy Lin. He's a well-known basketball player, LA Lakers. And the goal of showing you all these different occupations is that Kids get to grow up and be what they want to be. They dream about, not what their parents tell them, but what motivates them. This is Lisa Brennan Jobs, Steve Jobs' daughter. She was also in my class. And this is called her book that just came out a year ago. Small Fry is a book about actually her experience as Steve Jobs' daughter. This is Ben Hewlett, the grandson of the founder of Hewlett Packard, and he's a lawyer. This is Brian Wong. He is vice president of Alibaba. And so there's about 4 of my students who are in China and just happen to be involved in Alibaba. James Franco, he went into acting. He is in Eat, Pray, Love, 127 Hours, The Interview, Spider-Man. So he said something that goes for all the students I just showed you. Every student needs support. She showed me I could take my dreams as seriously as I wanted. He wanted to be an actor. You can imagine how difficult that is for his parents to accept, because being an actor, at least in the United States, means that you might not make a lot of money. So our world has changed dramatically. We have the biggest problem facing our planet is the climate problem. And we just had a conference about that in Scotland. We have drones today, robotics. We shop in the US, we shop on Amazon. I'm sure you have places that you shop online as well. We have fake news. We have coronavirus, which is like devastating for all of us. And we have all this digital currencies, Bitcoin, whatever. We didn't have that before. So we have security breaches all the time. $600 billion per year lost. The 17 biggest data breaches ever. You can just see them here. There's more. This is just a few of the data breaches. And Marriott Hotels, which is a major hotel chain here in the US, massive data breach. So there are officially more mobile devices than people in the world. And this is not something that we had 20 years ago. And so you need to think about how our world has changed. AI is invading our lives everywhere. And we also have these massive open online courses, Coursera, and I know all over Russia, there are also online courses. Social media has taken over our lives. So what it used to look like in 1995, the computer was big and the man was small. Okay, in 2015, the computer is small and the man is big, because the man is just sitting there all the time at the computer, not exercising anymore. So this is how our world has changed also. So here's a quote from Lord Jim Knight in the United Kingdom, and I think it's a great quote. If our schools can do more to better equip children with the mindset and skills to face an uncertain and challenging future, they should do it. But we are still teaching for the last century worldwide. It's not just in Kazakhstan, it's not just in Russia, it's not just in the US, it's everywhere. Factory model. We're still teaching the factory model. And we're still basing our curriculum on something from the 1893 curriculum. It's called the Committee of 10. The focus at that time was memorization, memorize. And guess what? Today, the focus is still memorization. And employers get what they don't really want. What do they get? People who follow instructions. They do not get people who are creative. Albert Einstein said, never memorize something you can look up. And what are we doing today? Still memorizing. Tests control what we learn. And this is one of the biggest tests, Program for International Student Assessment, the PISA test. controls what we learn in the world and controls the fact that we are not focused on creativity. 90% of school is lecture-based. It puts kids to sleep, but teachers keep lecturing anyway. University lectures are ineffective. All the studies show that. This is what we do in lectures. Here is an example. Our needs have changed. We need to change to prepare students for the 21st century world. Do students understand the material, or do they just memorize and forget? So there's a famous professor at Harvard who says, test taking promotes memorization, not learning, not thinking. 2 weeks after a test, students remember only 32%. A year later, students remember less than 10%. It's crazy what we're doing. So it's tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. That's what Ben Franklin said. And Winston Churchill, I'm always ready to learn, although I do not always like being taught. Neither one of them liked the top-down lecture method. Creativity is the number one thing everyone wants. How do we prepare creative students? Well, you're 96% less creative than you were as a child. Why is that? Expertise is the enemy of creativity. If you think you know it all, you're like, don't even try. Looking good is also the enemy of creativity. People are afraid that they won't look smart. So the preparation of talent has to start early at home. Children learn from projects they love. We are all born curious, and memorizing in school scares the creativity out of us because we're afraid to fail. Students learn by doing something, not by watching, not by listening, not by reading about it, by doing it. Schools can promote creativity, communication, collaboration, and critical thinking, and home can do it too. Preparation of talent must start early. Parents are the child's first teachers. Okay, so you have to avoid helicopter parenting. So if you're the teacher, don't constantly tell them what to do. Give them an opportunity to do and explore what they want to do. Helicopter parenting disempowers kids. The more you do for kids, the less empowered they are. Our focus should be empowering our kids because habits are developed early and hard to change later. 85% of brain development happens before 5. So if you're constantly telling your child what to do, they are always going to want you to do that no matter what. Give kids an opportunity to lead, let them plan a family outing, for example. And this is from kids. We are not just kids. We're leaders. We are future leaders. So provide lots of free time. Let them help around the house. Okay, maybe it's a mess, but let them help. Encourage exploration. Mistakes are part of it. And, you know, the highest form of research is play, according to Albert Einstein. Ken Robinson, the #1 TED speaker, said we stigmatize mistakes and we're now running national educational systems where mistakes are the worst thing you can make. And the result is we're educating people out of their creative capacity. Stop comparing our kids. Children are not pets. Avoid giving your babies and your young children electronic devices. This is what we see all over the place, only not tablets, phones. World Health Organization said limited or no screen time for kids under 5. Why? They don't learn social emotional skills when they're totally absorbed by a TV or an electronic device of any kind. So here's a new collaborative tool for the schools. This is something that I am doing with my former students. We started a program called Track.app Teach.track.app. If you're a teacher, you can go to that and get it free. Project-based learning you can do in the classroom. Here is me and my former student. He's the CEO. And as I said, teachers can sign up for free. It's a good way to practice their English. The content is created by teens for preteens. Content is curated, no professional development required, easy to use. And this is what it looks like. It looks like YouTube, but it is actually curated. So we need to have school and home collaborate, give students an opportunity to be creative, let them make mistakes, stop focusing on testing and grades. If they don't do well, don't be really upset. Build revision into all classes so that you can focus on the 4 C's: creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. Parents and teachers need to work together to change the future. Thank you for your attention. And this is cartoon from the New Yorker. It's always sit, stay, heal, never think, innovate, be yourself. Let's hope we can have them think, innovate, and be yourself. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Esther, for this great presentation. We also hope that we will have a chance to meet you in Kazakhstan face to face. And I would like to highlight one of the essential ideas, very simple one, but very important, which we forget often, is it is that every child is a human being, first of all. From birth, they are citizens, they have dignity, they have voice, and they have rights, and we cannot ignore them. And certainly we need to trust them, respect, and empower them. And thank you for talking about that. And it reminds me the Pygmalion effect, which refers to the phenomenon in which the greater the expectation placed upon people, the better they perform. And it often refers to children and to students. So yeah, we should believe in children more. I'm very pleased that you mentioned about the importance of early years and the power of play. And I would love to comment more on that, but we have a limited time. So let's discuss maybe some of the comments and questions from the discussion board. We need a huge transformation in education. It's obvious, yeah. But where should we start? There are lots of things that we should do, but what would be your advice and vision?
Well, my advice is that it's hard to change the system quickly. And so if you just change a little bit of the system, give kids an opportunity to work independently part of the time. And that's why I created Tract, because it fits into what I call 20% of the time or 10% of the time. You know, it gives kids an opportunity to work on things that they care about. The content is created by teenagers. So of course it's not, doesn't align 100% to the state standards, but it's very interesting and kids love it. I mean, there's things like, an example is one kid made a learning path on how to make a really fast paper airplane. Okay, so that's the kind of things that they do, but in the process, the kids are learning aerodynamics. They just don't know they're learning it. And so that's one thing. But if you can't use Tract, then one thing at home parents can do is give kids more of an opportunity to do things around the house, creative things. Don't buy toys that make a lot of noise. You just push a button. Blocks or Legos or coloring or art projects, or let them learn to cook. I mean, the fact is, if you can let your children help you around the house, it empowers them and it makes them feel like they can do it too. So I know a lot of parents think, well, I'm not going to make them quote work. I'll just let them, I'll take care of them. But honestly, what that's doing by accident is it's disempowering them, because you need to allow them, they might do it wrong in the beginning, but allow them to do things like make their own breakfast. You can teach them how to do that. Or, you can let them have a say in what you're going to be doing on the weekend. I just remember what I did with my daughters. I gave them a lot of opportunity to learn everything early. It was just because I thought, that makes them feel good about themselves. And it's so much easier for me. I didn't have anybody helping me. So, I just had to use my children as helpers. So I think the home and the school can work together, because the home can say, it's okay if my child doesn't get the top grade in the class, because maybe they didn't want to just memorize everything. Maybe they want to do something else. And if I just also think about it, all three of my daughters went to Ivy League schools, and they did not have the number, they did not have a 4.0 for a straight A average. They did not have that. But they had a lot of other things that they offered, that they had been involved in a lot of other activities. So, people don't realize it, but little kids are like you said, little people, and they need respect and they need trust, and they need to be treated in a way that shows that you have respect for them. The easiest way to show respect for your child is to listen when they talk.
Yeah,
That's the
thank you.
easiest.
Thank you, Esther. I do remember the story that you mentioned in your book, that your daughters were very independent from the early age. And the age of 2, they could like get up in the morning and have their breakfast themselves without like help of the adult. And that's amazing, really. I can't imagine like such a kid like at the age of 2 could do that. But yeah, that's something amazing.
Well, if you have those expectations, they will do it. And just like what you were saying at the beginning, if you expect them to do it and you believe in them, it's crazy, but then they believe in themselves. And so just you need to think about that. I can think of one other very simple example, and that's about skiing. If you have ever skied and you get to the top of the mountain and it looks scary, it's like, oh my God, what did I do? And if somebody says to you, oh, that's really dangerous, you're going to fall, that is going to influence you a lot. And you won't ski well. But if you think to yourself, this is a little bit challenging, but I'm going to do it, you will get down without a lot of problems. So, I mean, that's just a simple sport example, but it applies to so many aspects of life. And right now, what we're doing in the schools is asking our kids to sit for literally 6 to 7 hours and listen to lecture. And
Yeah.
so you have to ask yourself, is that really what we want to do?
Yeah, thank you, Esther. We have another good question. What was your biggest challenge when you were raising your daughters?
I think my biggest challenge was how to do it without a lot of support, because my husband was working all the time. He didn't have was a professor at Stanford, and they just work all the time. And so, we didn't have money for help. So the question was, how can I do a good job, on my own, without a lot of resources? And so I think that was the biggest challenge. And that was also what helped me, it just by accident, also helped me say that my daughters are going to be empowered and they're going to help me, because I can't, it's hard to do everything by yourself. And, they really helped. and they learned to do it early, and they felt like they were part of a team. So that was probably one of the hardest things that I faced, because it continued. If you read my book, it continued my whole life. When I moved to Geneva, Switzerland, we lived on a farm, and without a phone, without anything actually, except a bunch of cows. And so that was also a challenge. And fortunately, my daughters were older. They were 5, 4 and 5, but they could help. They could do a lot of things. So I think that probably was the biggest challenge.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I have a question about the technology. So you mentioned that there shouldn't be any technology like for young children. Could you comment on that more? Because I think with these pandemics, there is a huge now challenge with technologies, because children are spending more and more time using gadgets. So could you tell more
So
about
I, I would not let a child under the age of 2 use technology at all. And even though it's hard, I would give them crayons and paper. I would pretend technology didn't exist and figure out what else they can do. And the reason I would do that is because they are learning social emotional skills when they're little. And if they are focused on technology, they won't learn those skills, because there's just 24 hours in a day. And that's what you want them. You want them to use their imagination. As I said, just pretend it doesn't exist. I know for me, if I lose my phone, I feel like I feel crazy. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But if you spend just 24 hours without your phone, just 24 hours, you will see how different the world feels. And so that is why I think small children shouldn't use electronic devices. They can watch, TV, a little bit of TV, or maybe they can watch a little bit on an iPad when they're 2 years old or 3 years old, but certainly not before that age. And if they're bored, honestly, that's great. Boredom leads to creativity. Let them be bored.
Yeah, being bored is a really great process, because they try to find something, they try to explore and to find new ways. They experiment, and yeah, they research everything around them, just not focusing on those gadgets or particular toys. But yeah, they are more becoming active.
And I just want to emphasize that the early years are probably the most important. So if you have a small child, that's great. If you have an older child, you can still make these changes. It's just harder. It's because they already have tradition. They already expect things to be done a certain way. And that's why, with people that are over 30, it's even harder to make change, because they say, oh, I already know how to do that. I don't want to try anything new. And that's one of that's why it's hard to be creative when you're older, because you assume that you already know it.
Yeah, and it leads to another like question. So if we need these changes like happening in education, what about teachers? They are usually quite conservative, and
Teachers, I'm a teacher.
yeah,
So I can tell you it is really hard to change teachers. But that's why I said that the testing controls the system, because teachers are worried that their students will do poorly on the test, and then they will be seen as poor teachers. And so that's why the testing needs to change. Or if you test, you should not have punitive. It shouldn't be, a punishment if you do poorly. You should just use it as a tool to understand what else you need to study. But it's very hard. That's why I actually created Tract to help teachers bring creativity into the classroom. All you have to do is open the computer and go on Tract and click, and their kids can be creative for an hour. 20% of the time is like, not a lot of time, but all classrooms have what I call downtime, because they're waiting for something to happen. And it's during that time that kids can use it. And so that is my goal in using this. It's basically like a social network for kids, teenagers teaching younger kids. They can all work together. But it's hard for teachers. It's because of tradition, and it's because of the culture, and culture makes it's hard to change.
Yeah. Thank you, Esther. There are lots of positive comments, and with gratitude to your presentation, for your ideas and resources that you shared as well. And some of the participants read your book, and they saying that they got some very useful recommendations. Yeah, and indeed, I myself got a lot of useful things from this book. Thank you very much for your contribution to this conference. I believe that participants got the very valuable experience listening to you and got some insights and ideas for their practice. Thank you once again, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'm really happy that you were the moderator.
Thank you. I enjoyed it really.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.